Ask for clarification. What do you mean by this? The mutual forfeiture of rights creates a society where everyone is more secure. But most of an individual's benefits from the social contract comes from other people giving up their rights. That is correct. Interesting. Press for backing. Can you support that statement? You yourself gave countless examples of people working together. Do these not suffice? When the stronger man agrees to guard the weak in exchange for pay, in that instant a contract is formed. That thing, it's just skimming over so many details there. Strong and weak and pay and guard, they're all complicated ideas. Question relevance? How is this related to conclusion? It details the logic that leads directly up to it. It is from such exchanges that our sense of morality is born. Ask for clarification. What exactly do you mean by that? I mean to say that morality comes from the social contract. We form treaties, and these treaties determine what we are allowed to do. Press for backing. Can you back that up for me? Assuming as we have that the natural state exists, no, it doesn't exist. And in the natural state man is free to do whatever he pleases, we are still... never mind. We can only conclude that the restrictive morality we know comes from contracts formed between men. So many assumptions, bro. Okay. Does we form contracts agreeing to give up freedoms in exchange for security challenge mankind is selfish?
Nonsense!
Hold it right there, Hobbes. Dun-dun. I admit the individual parts of your philosophy sound good on paper, but they don't work quite so well when viewed as a whole. Is that so? Do explain. Gladly. Your social contract theory is based on the idea that people are selfish, correct? Indeed. And that they will go to any lengths to improve their own prosperity. Correct, which is why contracts must be formed. I'm still a little confused. What exactly is the problem, Socrates? Isn't it apparent by now? If the only benefits of the social contract come from other people giving up their rights, and people are selfish as you claim, what is to stop these also selfish individuals from breaking a contract after it's made? Retribution? Maybe? Dun-dun-dun! Exclamation! 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 Why, that's a very good question. Yeah, no, retribution. Anyway, working off Hobbes' own theory of human nature, men will always seek the most advantageous situation. Well, the most advantageous situation for anyone would be that they would keep their rights when others give them up. So why would people ever keep their contracts? Because of retribution. Because if you break a contract, people will kill you. They'll mess you up if you break a contract. That's why. They would... Of course not. Everyone would stab each other in the back the moment they could get away with it. If they could get away with it. But how do you know you can get away with it? You break a contract and you think you can get away with it? Maybe you can, but maybe you can't. Are you going to take that risk? Hobbes, your ideas taken all together are self-defeating. I don't know. I feel like this thing's falling apart a little bit here. They're glossing over a lot of things. There's no way the social contract could be formed in the way you've described.
Nonsense!
Yo, Mr. Jones, you're getting carried away. I think I made good points. Laughter is nothing more than a reaction to sudden glory, Mr. Jones. Oh, I could be laughing at your ridiculous face. And in your case, the glory you're reacting to is quite artificial, right? What? All of these things you are saying, they have occurred to me. Why didn't you say so in the first place, bro? They are, in fact, the obvious progression of thought. The fact that any self-interested man would break his contract is a problem. Which is why I came up with the next step in the thought process. Great. Without obligation, selfish individuals are indeed likely to break the contract. However, such obligation can easily be created by fear, namely fear of repercussions. Well, there you go, retribution. This fear can in turn be created by empowering a sovereign. No, that's a mistake. You don't need a sovereign to create that fear. You just need to build into the contract the fact that if anybody breaks the contract, everybody else gangs up on them, which is what we actually have. I mean, we don't have sovereigns anymore. Like, we don't have kings and queens anymore, really. But if you break the law, then everybody else kind of brands you as a criminal and puts you in prison, because your breaking of the social contract jeopardizes everybody else, and so it's in everybody else's interest to punish you for breaking that contract, and so they do. There's no sovereign involved. It still works. I don't know. This thing is falling apart. Such a ruler could then deal out punishment to those who break the contract. As a result, the moral systems of the contract will remain intact. But you don't need a sovereign to do that. See, that's what I mean. Like, in his time, there are kings, and then there are princes, and there are, but, and so his philosophy is constrained by his experience. He lived in a time when there wasn't, functioning democracies, where, people would still be punished for breaking laws, even if there were no king. Like, we live in that situation now, and so we can see that it works for us. But he can't see, or he couldn't see that it would work for him, right? And there you go. As you can see, Mr. Jones, my philosophy is quite sustainable. The social contract simply needs proper enforcement, and it has. Contracts need to be enforced. Added to the idea slate. You know what? I think I actually missed talking to Euthyphro. Dad, are you going to be okay? I don't know if there's a problem here, Ari. Yeah, the sovereign. You don't need the sovereign. That's the problem. Although that's not the nature of morality. What I'm talking about is law and criminality and punishment, which is a different thing from morality. The fact that you agree not to steal and not to kill, and then if you break those laws, then you get punished. That's a commentary on the legal and justice system that we live with. It doesn't really talk about the nature of morality or where morality comes from. Not really. It talks about how it's implemented, I guess, or how one interpretation of morality is implemented in the real world. It doesn't really say where it comes from. Anyway, I mean, we just need to define the nature of morality. Maybe this is it. No. Do you honestly believe that? Do you think that morality is found in the rules dictators enforce? No. Well, no. Well then, keep looking. There's to be a flaw in the argument somewhere. Are you two quite done chatting over there? Yes, Arbiter, sorry. Hobbes, you may have thought through my previous challenges, but my life depends on only accepting the true nature of morality, and somehow I just can't accept that this is it. Humbug. Very well then, Mr. Jones. I have all the time in the world. Examine away. Without obligations, selfish individuals are indeed likely to break the contract. Alright, I think that's pretty clear. However, such an obligation can easily be created by fear, namely fear of repercussions. It's not even fear. It's real repercussions. I mean when you punish someone for breaking the law, you're not using fear. Oh, maybe you are, but you're not necessarily using fear to control behavior. You're using consequences to control behavior. Like if you steal $1 million, you get caught, you lose the $1 million, and you lose your freedom. Then even if you don't fear losing your freedom, you don't want to lose your freedom. Like you're not afraid of the consequences. You just don't desire the consequences, so you don't do it. You see what I mean? So fear is a different thing again. They're being really careless with what they introduce. Like fear is a different concept altogether. Like repercussions themselves should be sufficient to enforce obligation. You don't need fear of repercussions to enforce obligation. You see what I mean? Does that make sense? What do you mean by this? Fear repels us from its source. That's unnecessary. If breaking the contract was connected with something men feared, they would be compelled to respect it. That's not necessary. Although in his time it might be, because back then, education was rare. And most people didn't, have education. And so maybe they didn't, think as much about things. They kind of operated on fairly simple logic and on emotions mostly, if you're uneducated. So I mean, in his time that might be the case, whereas in our time and in developed countries where basic education is fairly accessible, you shouldn't need fear. Like, it should be logical to people. Anyway, so like a horde of zombies. What? Excuse me? Well, people fear zombies, so if breaking the contract was tied to unleashing zombies, I think my dad gets it. Let's move on. What? For once we agree. This is so bad. Alright. Press for backing. Can you back this up? Tell me, Mr. Jones, are you familiar with the concept of hell? Yes, and I also don't believe it. In Christian religions, fear of hell is used as a major motivator in keeping the tenets of the faith. But we've decided that religion is not the source of morality. I thought we've decided that. For many, it's even more effective motivator than the promise of heaven. Well, they're stupid then. Spare the rod, spoil the child. There are countless situations in which fear is used to enforce the public good. No, fear is used to enforce the good of a particular group of people, not necessarily the public good. I mean, there's nothing publicly good about everybody living in fear, right? Relevance. How is this related to your conclusion? I am describing the solution to the aforementioned problem, alright? This fear can in turn be created by empowering a sovereign. But who empowers the sovereign? What do you mean by this exactly? Simple. The people give power to a ruler who is able to enforce the contract. I'm not sure people give power to sovereigns. I thought sovereigns take power by force. By give power you mean form an agreement with, indeed, as in the contract. Yes, in exchange for the power he grants order and protection. Interesting. Statement updated. The sovereign forms a contract with the people to enforce their rules. Ask for clarification. What do you mean by this? The people agree to obey the sovereign, they give him power. In return, the sovereign punishes those who disobey the social contract. I guess you could say the same thing about a police force, for example, in a democratic government. I mean, the police is not the sovereign, but we grant the police certain rights. More rights than we grant to the ordinary citizens. The right to arrest people, for example. And then they enforce the law. Although at the same time, we also reserve the right to prosecute the police as well if they break the laws. So the police are also bound by laws. The same laws that we are bound by. Well, that's the idea. That's the contract. Such a ruler could then deal out punishment to those who break the contracts. Ask for clarification. What do you mean by that? Imprisonment, flaying, hanging. A ruler would be able to deal out justice as appropriate to those who deserve it. Press for backing. Can you back the statement up? Do you know what the law is? Yes. Have you ever heard of the law without the government? The higher power of the sovereign is necessary for enforcing systems to exist. But the government is not the sovereign. The government is sometimes it can be, or it can include a sovereign. Next, and as a result, the moral systems of the contract will remain intact. Actually, that's pretty clear. The sovereign forms a contract with the people to enforce their rules. Challenge. Contracts need to be enforced.
Nonsense!
Hobbes! I will admit that your philosophy is very interesting from a political perspective. but as a basis of morality it simply won't stand.
Nonsense!
Mr. Jones, even now you lack sensible qualities such as fear. Haven't you learned not to make such brash statements?
Nonsense!
Is that really necessary? Brash this time I think not. Point enough grandstanding, get to the point. Hobbes, you said that the source of our obligation to the social contract is in the pressure laid upon us by the sovereign, is that correct? Yes. And the sovereign's power to apply such pressures come from a contract between him and the people, yes. Absolutely. Well then, Hobbes, answer me this. What obligates the king to follow his contract with the people? Actually, I can answer that. If the king does not uphold his end of the contract, the people rebel and throw him out of power and put a different king in power. That's what obligates the king to follow the contract in monarchies. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but it happens enough in history for us to know quite clearly that if a king does a bad job, the people will rebel and throw him out. So there is an answer to this, actually. But the game's too stupid. Exclamation, 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 exclamation. You may have added a layer of obligations, Hobbes, but you haven't fixed anything. The problem is still exactly the same. The king, being selfish, would take advantage of his people. He will try to. And we are back where we started. No matter, just another moment of your time and I will lay out what binds the king to his contract. Presentation?
Nonsense!
No. What? I don't need to hear it, Hobbes. What? How dare you? The fact is we can do this forever. I can continue to point out the lack of obligation in your morality and you can attempt to provide a source. No, but it's a circular, you know, there's a circular obligation here. The king has to enforce the laws on the people, but if the king does a bad job, the people throw him out of power. So the obligation for the king is the people, and the obligation for the people is the king. So it forms a circle. So you don't need a source because it's a closed ring. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, again, it's not the source of morality, but it's how I guess, you know, governments have functioned. You are curing the symptoms and not the disease. No, Socrates, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. I disagree with this. The question you need to answer is not what obligates the king. If the source of the obligation is a contract, then it can only be another contract. Yeah, a circular contract. Instead, answer me this. What obligates us to keep our contracts? What makes them the source of morality? It doesn't. See, that's correct. I mean, see, yeah. But how do we get here, though? That's a bit strange. But yeah, so that's the proper question. What obligates us to keep our contract? What makes them the source of morality? They're not the source of morality, not the contracts, but they are a manifestation, as I said earlier. Contracts, or the social contract, is a manifestation of one interpretation of morality. It's how we enforce morality, or how we enforce an interpretation of morality in the form of a law or a set of laws. It's not the source of it, but it's how it manifests itself, if that makes sense. Can you answer this, Hobbes? No. Well, no. You've actually stumped him. This is the core of your problem, Hobbes. Morality based on contracts lead to an infinite regression of obligations. Or a circular regression of obligations. That works better than infinite regression. Thus it can't possibly be the true source. No, that's true. Gah! Oh Dad, let's see him counter that. Well, Hobbes, how can something that requires obligation be the source of all obligation? Yeah, alright. It doesn't make sense. Your philosophy is hobbled, Hobbes. Wow, that's great. Look at that. Your philosophy is hobbled, Hobbes. That's so good. It's so good. ... Well, you see, preposterous. The sovereign will the fear creates in us the mechanical drive to think he just exploded. ... Socrates, do you know what my last words were before I died? Now I'm about to take my last voyage, a great leap into the dark. Okay, that's... okay. I desired rest, a life finally free from fear and discomfort. I did not wish to be trapped in this realm debating for all eternity. Accepting the Arbiter's challenge was a foolish choice, Miss Jones, but needless to say, I can understand why you did so. And ignorant as you were, you have given me reason to re-examine my principles. I don't know, there were a lot of holes in both your arguments, to be honest. I shall take my leave. Okay, bye. Alright, well that's the social contract. I mean, there were issues with how the game presented the ideas, but ultimately, I mean, the social contract is a description, but not the source of morality. I don't even know if that makes any sense. The source of morality, but it's a description of one manifestation of morality. Anyway, chapter 4, The Pursuit of Happiness, is coming up next. I'll see you guys in the next video.